lips of Brother Richie as he shares with us from your word. Help us, Lord, to listen with open hearts and be attentive, be willing to serve you in whatever capacity you bring us. We ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Bless you.
Well, good evening. Greet each of you in Jesus' name. The topic we did in the Sunday school hour today, we talked about culture and how the culture that we live in affects the way that we think about the scripture and the way that we think about biblical stewardship. And there is some profit to thinking about how things were 400 years ago, but I have figured out that I don't get to live 400 years ago. I live now. And I don't get to live in a third world country unless I move there as a missionary. I live here. So I need to understand what my culture is, what the pressures I face in my culture, and I still need to be able to apply biblical truth in the year 2025 in a North American culture. And it's just as tricky for us as it is for others, but it's what we can do. The second topic we looked at in the sermon hour was principles of stewardship. What does the Bible say about stewardship? Who does own everything? And how do we think about these things? This evening is not a sermon at all. It really is a topic, not a sermon. And it is mostly directed toward the older people about being responsible for cleaning up your affairs near the end of your life. Who is an older person? Well, I will leave that kind of up to your discretion. I'll give you my thought that if you're 50 years or older, you certainly are the subject of the topic tonight. If you are under 50 years, your parents are the subject of this topic. And it would behoove you to think about some of these things because some of your parents are not going to be competent and some of them are going to be lazy and some simply aren't going to get their things done. And that means you will be cleaning up after them. And maybe if you can help your parents understand some of these things that need to be tended to, then 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you won't have as difficult a job to clean up after them. So this topic is geared toward older people, and the middle-aged people and the younger people can listen in. But I will be honest that there's not as much here tonight for the children. Like it's kind of above your head. It's not stuff that's going to be interesting to you. So at AF, we have a set of children's books. And I brought those children's books, and they're sitting out by the mailboxes in the library. And if you are school age and you would rather read a book, there are books about stewardship and finances written at a children's level. And there's 6 copies of each of them. There's 5 of them out there. And you can go out and get a book to read tonight. And you will be able to get something out of it as well. You don't have to be shy. You just scoot on out there and get yourself a book or 2 or 3 and come back and you can read them, and we don't need the books back. You can take them home with you when you're done. There's a little admonition that I've heard a couple times in my life. My mother used to tell me to pick up after myself. And I imagine some of you have been told to pick up after yourself in life. Do you do that? Like little children, we expect them to pick up after themselves. We have 2 grandsons that are toddler age, and when they come to our house, one of the first things that happens is they go to the corner where the toys are, and there is a big basket of farm animals. And it doesn't matter how big of a farm they're going to make, all of the farm animals have to be dumped out. And there is a basket of tractors and trucks and cars, and they might be wanting a certain one, but every one of them has to be dumped out on the floor. And when they leave, their parents do a pretty good job of saying, pick up after yourself, and they get down there and they help them pick up. Older people. Do you pick up after yourself, or are you intending that someone else is going to clean up the mess you leave behind? I think you need to be realistic about the stage of life that you're at and think about what comes next. In the Old Testament, King Hezekiah was told to set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. And you know that story, how he prayed and was given a couple extra years, But guess what? King Hezekiah isn't here. It came to pass. King Hezekiah died, he did not live, and he either had his house set in order or he didn't have his house set in order. Offer you up front 3 biblical principles that I think apply when you're setting your house in order. The first is in James chapter 4, we are told to do everything in life Lord willing, with a Lord willing attitude. Now, the scripture says you do plan to go on Friday to such and such a place and do business. But you plan to go to that place on Friday and do business Lord willing. You are understanding that I am responsible to make plans, but God might overrule my plans. My plans are not set in concrete. I think as an older person trying to be responsible for your life, you need to make plans about your financial affairs, but you make those plans Lord willing. Something might change between now and the end that totally upsets or changes my plans. That does not negate the responsibility I have to make plans. Just as you should have something you're planning to do tomorrow, like you shouldn't be planning to wake up tomorrow and then figure it out. Hopefully you have in your mind, tomorrow I've got some responsibilities. I've got some tasks I'm going to attend to. I've got some work I'm going to do. There might not be a tomorrow for you. You are still responsible to plan ahead. You just plan ahead, Lord willing. The second biblical principle that I think applies is given several places in the New Testament. We're told to think soberly. That means that there's a time to think seriously about things that would be easier not to think about. It would be easier to kick that can down the road, but a Christian person is a person who is supposed to think seriously. They're supposed to be willing to sit down and wrap their mind around something that's serious and take it to a conclusion. We're also encouraged in Scripture to do things decently and in order. So your affairs as an older person, your financial affairs as a family, should be done decently, and they should be in an order that someone can close them out for you when you're not here to do it yourself. I have a couple of questions for you to think about tonight, and most of this is, I'm going to give you more questions than you can maybe answer, so maybe you take one question home and you think about that question. And how could I improve what I've got planned and what God might expect for me in this area? My first question is, as an older person, are you intentionally and steadily working to simplify your estate? There's 2 words there, intentionally and steadily. So intentionally, when I die, I want it to be simpler than it is today for my children to wrap this up. Whatever it's like today, until I die, I'm going to do things to make it more simple for the children. And then the word steadily. Well, it's okay to have intentions to make it simpler for the children, but if you never get anything done, you didn't make it simpler for the children. So I'm going to intentionally and steadily work to simplify my estate. Do you still carry debt as an older person? Do you still owe money on a property, on a business, on equipment, personal loan, vehicle? Do you understand that debt greatly complicates the settling of any estate? When there's a debt that has to be paid off to close this person out, I would give a strong encouragement for any older person who has debt that you need to get serious about solving that problem. And sometimes it's as simple as selling a property. That, you know what, we actually don't need this property anymore, and there's still a mortgage on this property, and this property is something we could sell, and if we're willing to downsize, we could be debt-free. And it would be so much easier for the children if this debt went away. Sometimes older people splurge on themselves in their older age. They didn't take a lot of vacations when they were raising the family. They didn't do a lot of out to eat when they were raising the family. But now that they're older and don't have child expenses, they just kind of pamper themselves a little bit. If you've got debt, it's not time to pamper yourself. It's time to keep yourself on the same type of diet that you were on before financially and work to pay that debt off, because you want to make it simple for the children. If you have debt, I would encourage it to go away. Sometimes debt can be gotten rid of in your older age simply by letting go of some things. Maybe it's a piece of equipment that you actually don't need. Maybe it's that second house or the cabin, and you don't actually need it. Maybe one of your children need it worse than you do. And rather than give it to them, you might be in a position to sell it to them at a favorable price. Some old people have lots of stuff. Not everyone is natured that way. I am kind of natured that way. I don't easy get rid of my stuff. A couple of weeks ago, we had the family over after church on Sunday, and my daughter-in-laws were in the kitchen helping Mom with something, and we were talking about my funeral. And I was talking to my daughter-in-law, Abigail, and I told her, now, when you come back from my funeral, I don't want you throwing away this and throwing away this. And she's a minimalist type person. Like, what do we need? And that's what we have. I'm like, if I have it, why would I ever get rid of it? I might need it someday. So I keep things. I told her that I would look forward to going to my estate sale because I've got good stuff. Like, that would be a good auction to be at. I would like to see who bought what. And being her, she retorted that, no, the reason you would be at the estate sale is because you would be in the dumpster pulling out the stuff that we told the auctioneer wouldn't sell. And I told her, yes, I do need to work on my will. We will be addressing you in the will. If you're an older person and you've got a bunch of stuff, have you thought about letting go of some of that stuff? Like, if it's actually good and useful, why don't you give it to the children now instead of you keeping it and you hardly use it and they have to borrow it off of you? Why not the next time they borrow something, just tell them it doesn't need to come back? If I ever need it, I know where it's at. It's at your house, and I will come borrow it from you, but you need it more than I need it. Why don't you start simplifying your estate now? Is anything in your financial situation complicated? Like, if you're thinking about your finances, like, well, this would be hard to explain. Well, if it's hard to explain, how do you think they're going to solve it when you're dead and you're not there to explain it? If you've got anything complicated in your life, you have a responsibility to move that towards something simple. I think older people should move towards simple assets, not complicated assets. What are simple assets? Real estate, cash, personal possessions. Some older people make loans. They benefited from a loan, maybe from a family member when they were coming along, and now they make loans to children or grandchildren. 80-year-old people don't really have any business making long-term loans, being pretty presumptuous there. Keep your assets simple. If you're in a business partnership, do you have a buy-sell agreement written? Like, how do they settle this when you're gone? What happens to your share in the business? Who is supposed to buy it? What are the terms under which they're allowed to buy it? What's the price going to be? How's the price going to be determined? That all goes in a buy-sell agreement. And then when you die and you're not there to represent your share in the partnership, it makes it easier for everybody else because we know how this ends. It's all laid out in paper already. Any vaguely defined financial issues in your life, if it's vague for you, how is someone else going to know how to solve it? When we moved to Virginia 20-some years ago, I and my brother-in-law bought a piece of property together. We bought a small farm, and we walked it over, and we decided where we were going to divide it up, run the property line. And it wasn't about a year later I realized we had made a mistake. There was a 1/4 acre of land that was on his side of the property line that really fit a lot better with my property. And I said something to him, and he's like, yeah, you're right. It would make a lot more sense for you to have that 1/4 acre of ground than for it to sit on my side of the property line. So I asked him what he wanted for it. He said, I paid him. And you know, we never transferred a deed on that. In one sense, it's worked out pretty well. He's paid taxes on my 1/4 acre for 20 years. But I know where my 1/4 acre is that's on his land. He knows where it's at, and we're both going to be dead someday. And how does that 1/4 acre get to my boys if it's deeded to his girls? Okay, that's something that's on like a personal list for me. There's a vaguely defined issue. I kind of know where the property line is. He knows where the property line is. He got paid for it 20 years ago. But I need to go to an attorney. It's on my list for 2025 that by the end of 2025, that's actually in my name so that I don't make it complicated for my boys or for his girls when the two of us die. You need to be able to initiate transition sooner rather than later. Amish people actually do better at this than Mennonites. That's just a general rule of thumb. There are exceptions to that. In the Amish tradition, it's much more readily accepted for mom and dad to let go, to turn the farm over to someone else, to back out of the business and to go from being the owner of the business to the guy that sweeps the floors and makes deliveries. They're a little better at that. Some Mennonites, you wait till they die and then you pry their fingers off of it. Don't be that type of a person. Yes, maybe you built the business. Maybe you've been the driver in the business all these years. But the boys are the ones that are making the business go today, or a son-in-law. It's time to let go of it. Let go of it before you die, and let go of it before you're old. And if you do it and you're nice about it, they'll let you stay and sweep the floors or run errands, and then you can go take off and go fishing any day you want because you're not the business owner anymore and the problems belong to them. Initiate transition sooner rather than later, and if you're not doing it right away, at least have a buy-sell agreement. Who is eligible to buy my share, and how is it determined what they're going to pay for my share? Older people should be adjusting their living arrangements to meet their actual, present, and future needs. You know, there are a lot of old people who are bumbling around in a big house, and it's just the two of them. And the yard work is really more than they can handle. But a lot of their life, they didn't have the big house. And then finally, they got the big house, and then all the children got married and moved off. And mom and dad are here trying to take care of this big house. It's not efficient for them. They actually can't handle all the work. They're putting the work on the children anyway. Maybe a transition needs to happen. Maybe you need to make a change. It's this odd situation. Two old people on a big property, and they've got children, maybe a son or a daughter, married with a big row of children crowded into a little house, can barely make do. Something doesn't seem right. What about future needs? What are you going to need in the future? Sometimes you get to the point where you realize you are an older person. It kind of dawns on you all of a sudden that I'm not as spry and agile as I once was. And I'm not going to be able to take care of this place in a couple of years. Well, if you can see it coming, well, then do something about it. If you're not going to be able to take care of the place in a couple of years, then you shouldn't have the place. You should have a place that you can take care of and be responsible, taking care of your own things. I really encourage the downsize now and then be settled in before anything goes wrong. I really admire my in-laws. They did a very good job of this. Joe and Rosie Hirschberger down in Abbeville. They had the big house. Finally, when they were older, they were not wealthy people in their lifetime. He was a chicken farmer and he taught school for many years. But they finally got a big, nice house. Rosie had a big house. All the children could come home, and they weren't able to keep it up. And they made a decision one day. They made it, a preacher from somewhere else came to their church, talked about making changes like this. They couldn't sleep that night. They said they finally got up and went and played Scrabble because they weren't going to sleep anyway. And they talked about it till wee hours of the morning. First thing in the morning, they called one of their grandsons and said, "We need a meeting with you and your wife tonight." He was all tore up, didn't know what we did to offend grandpas. They came to the meeting and they said, "We want to sell you the house. We'd like to keep the basement and put an apartment down there as our Dottie house, but we want you all to have the big house. You've got a growing family. Go away, think about it." And a family agreement was made, and the young couple with the row of children moved into the big house. Grandma and Grandpa moved down into the basement. Of course, not all of their things fit in the basement, so they had a family sale. All the family came. Only family was invited. The children all got things that they wanted or needed, and when they were done, everything else was loaded up and taken to a thrift store. They didn't do an auction. They didn't do a yard sale. It either went to the family or it went to the thrift store. I think it was the thrift store for Jamaica Relief Ministries. I'm proud of those two older people because when they pass away, they're both 94 years old now, it will take me and the brother-in-laws about an afternoon to clean up after them. There's a little bit of furniture left in the apartment. All of their assets are converted into cash. They sold all of their real estate, transferred it to the children. It's going to be very easy. They cleaned up after themselves. Question number 2. If you consider yourself an older person, or if your parents are older and you're wondering about them, have any intentional decisions been made about inheritances? That's kind of a touchy subject, inheritances. Have any intentional decisions been made about inheritances? For about 20 years, I've been conducting a little survey, and it is an informal survey. So I'm not a scientific pollster by any means, but I've been asking a question and keeping track of the answers. When someone that I'm well enough acquainted with to visit with has a parent who dies, their parents pass away, I wait an appropriate amount of time after the funeral, and then I come back and I just kind of come across them somewhere, and conversation turns to their parents that passed away, and I ask, how did it go settling up your folks' things? How did it go, settling the estate? A full 2/3, and these are all Amish and Mennonite people, a full 2/3, their answer is, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. Some of them are a little bitter and some are kind of resigned and accepting it wasn't fair, but I don't care, but it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. Do you know every last person who issues unfair inheritances has a reason for doing it? They don't do it for anyhow. Like in their mind, they've got a reason why it shouldn't have been fair. But you know that there is a consequence to unfair inheritances. It does generate feelings. So I think I would give the suggestion, you better have a pretty good reason, and you better run your reason by somebody else if the inheritance is going to be unfair. What are some special circumstances that might merit an unfair inheritance? Now, by fair, I mean you just divide everything up. 5 children, everything goes 5 ways. Often it's a little stickier than that because there's like a home place, and the home place is kind of sentimental to a number of the children, and they would all like to have the home place, and you can't take a chainsaw and cut it into 5 pieces. One of them has to end up with it. and the others can't. And in our settings, sometimes it's a farm. There's a farm that's been passed down in the family, and Junie boy really needs to get the farm. He's stuck with dad at the end, and he can't afford to pay for it, so he has to get it for a little bit of nothing. And by the way, that shoots a hole in everybody else's inheritance. And then 10 years later, Junie boy sells it and cashes out, and everybody's remembering he got the family farm for a song. And if Junie boy doesn't sell it, his sons will. And then the grandsons are remembering all the money in the family went over there because Junie boy got the farm. And he got it for a little bit of nothing because he must have been Grandpa's favorite. Unfair inheritances are like planting bad seeds. Are there circumstances that merit unfair inheritances? I think there are some. If you have a family situation where there is a dependent family member who's not able to care for themselves, maybe it's physically or mentally, they've not been able to earn the same wage living in life as the other children have, they haven't had the same opportunities, well, that person needs to be taken care of, and it is fair for more to be set aside for that one. It can be done in ways that end up being fair, maybe like a trust fund that is to care for this person, and some of the siblings are the trustees, and whatever is not used up in the dependent person's lifetime then gets distributed to the trustee or to the remaining siblings at death. That is something that is fair. Because think about it, if that dependent family member is not taken care of in a special way, who is going to take care of them? He's going to have to go live with one of the siblings, or she's going to have to go live with one of the siblings. They're going to have extra expenses. There is a fairness to making sure money is there to meet a need that you know will exist. Please understand that favoritism in inheritances almost inevitably sows bad seeds. Sometimes it takes one generation and sometimes it takes two, but they come out. Now, our family background, we come from Abbeville, and Abbeville comes from Virginia Beach, many of you probably know. In Abbeville, I still hear stories about Virginia Beach, about inheritances back in Virginia Beach. And this is why one branch of the family has more money than another branch of the family. It's because of what happened when the farm was sold in Virginia Beach. Well, in the next generation will be the stories about the farm that was sold in Abbeville. And the generation after that will be about the place that was sold up in Hillsville, Virginia. Or are we going to be careful about inheritances? Do you know there are some things that you cannot divide evenly in an inheritance? A home place is one of those. It takes some special thought and consideration, but it gets even smaller than that. In my wife's family, Grandpa Joe had a shotgun that was his Grandpa Joe's. Well, guess what? There's only one shotgun from great-great-great-Grandpa Joe. And you know how many grandsons there are? Well, if you had a hacksaw, each one would get a piece about that big. Okay, you're not going to cut that one shotgun into all those pieces. So how are you going to decide who gets great-great-Grandpa Joe's shotgun? Are you just going to let it go to family auction? You know who gets it then? The one with the most money. That's something where you probably just need to make an intentional decision. And in this case, we had a Joe, so he got the shotgun because he was a namesake grandson. And everybody understands that it can't go everywhere. If you have things like that that can't go everywhere and it has special meaning in the family, go ahead and put a name on it now. That way it isn't, okay, when we go to Grandma's house and she's not there, who gets that? Well, Grandma already decided who got that. And was it fair? Was it unfair? You can't cut it in pieces. It can only go to one. So a decision sometimes has to be made. Are inheritances as a whole good or bad? The answer is not yes, and the answer is not no. The answer is it depends. An inheritance can be good, and an inheritance can be bad. Scripture gives both sides of that. It says that good men leave inheritances to children's children. It didn't say to children. It said a good man leaves inheritances to children's children. Well, think about that. If you're a grandpa, if you're a dottie, is there something you could leave for your children's children? It might not be much. My grandmother passed away about 2 years ago, and in her will, the children didn't get anything. It went to the grandchildren, and there was a tremendous number of them. Our little grandson would have been her great-great-grandson. He got like $500. But for a little boy, $500 is a chunk of change. And it went in his savings. And it came from great-great-grandma. Good men leave inheritances to children's children. It also says that some inheritances are pretty hastily gotten at the beginning. Oh, I was glad to get that inheritance. And afterwards, it's sorrow and trouble. It's not actually about the money. It's about making intentional decisions to bless. When you are an older person, you need to start a very difficult process of making decisions that are not about you. Older people can get selfish, actually, to where, during their child-raising years, they were very generous, very sacrificial with the children. But then when they get older, some older people start getting kind of selfish. They kind of expect to be catered to because I'm old and I have some infirmities and you need to help me. They get a little demanding. I think it should go the other way. I think it's a blessing in family when older people kind of orient all their decisions around everyone else. I don't want to inconvenience anyone. And I think this even extends to finances. My wife and I, we don't consider ourselves elderly yet, but we have a home place there in Virginia now, and we considered adding on to the house. We already added on to it quite a bit, and we considered adding more on. And then we thought about it, you know what? It's just going to increase the value of the property. We only need that extra space on rare occasions. It would be better to crowd the family in when they're all home, and then the one that has to end up buying this place doesn't have to pay so much for it. Make decisions that are good for the children. When you make your estate, have you ever considered tithing on your estate? I believe probably many of you have tithed in your lifetime. When you earn income, you set aside 10% for God. And that's good and that's appropriate to do. What about all of the unearned value you've accumulated in your life? You bought a place back in the day for $45,000. And now it's worth $350,000. It's appreciated in value $300,000. Have you tithed on that $300,000? The only time you can really do that, unless you sell it, is at your death, in your estate. Is that part of your will? That if you have significant accumulation in your lifetime, that it's going to go to church or charity, kingdom work somewhere? Or are you just going to scoop that all in for yourself and the children? Have you considered tithing on your estate? Another question for you. Have you made and clearly communicated end-of-life plans? Two parts to that. Have you made end-of-life plans? And then if you have you clearly communicated them? You should make decisions about how this is going to end. Remember, you're doing it Lord willing. God could change everything, but I'm responsible to plan. You should make decisions while you're still capable of making them. because some older people get to the place where they're not capable of making decisions. They get hesitant, or their mind starts failing them. I had an interesting conversation with the young lady that does some hospice work. At the end of life, what I see in some older people is it's kind of like a downward spiral. Like nobody thinks this is the beginning of the end. It's just another little bump in life, and I'm going to bounce back from this. But mom takes a turn for the worse. And you're busy taking care of mom, and mom's busy trying to get better and not liking it that she doesn't feel well. And mom doesn't get better. She gets a little bit worse. And everybody gets a little busier taking care of mom, and mom gets a little busier being sick. And it kind of goes like this. And there's no time, and it doesn't even seem halfway chite to sit down and talk about the estate. And mom's only going in one direction at this point. She's leaving this life, and there are things that weren't talked about yet. There are decisions that weren't made. It would have been much easier for everybody if the conversation had been had back when mom was feeling good and her mind was clear and she was able to clearly communicate what she wanted. I think you should begin a continuing dialogue with your children, like we're talking about this. It's okay. Like, you don't have to feel like it's weird that you talk to mom about mom dying because mom's talking to you about mom dying. Like, I'm getting older. One of these days I'm not going to be here. We need to start talking about a few things. There's two maybe baskets that those conversations fall into. One of the baskets is end-of-life care. Like, what do I want? Do I want them hooking me up to machines? No, I don't want them hooking me up to machines. Well, then you need a medical directive of some kind. You need to give some instructions. Why leave it with the family? Mom's laying there. Mom's very sick. Maybe mom can't even communicate. And the children have to decide, what are we going to do for mom and what aren't we going to do for mom? Would have been a whole lot smarter if mom had thought about that and mom had decided what I want. I'm okay with this and this, but I don't want this, this, or this. And then put it in writing. And then tell all of the children when they're all together the same thing. Because you're going to have one that is practical-minded and listens to you. And you're going to have one that is kind of like this soft little emotional ball of mush, and she's not willing to let you go when you're old. And it's good to have it in writing. And then the practical one, hopefully he can do it kindly. He says, yeah, but remember what mom said? Remember, it was after Christmas supper back in 2025, and mom sat us down and she said, if it gets to the end, I want this, and I do not want this, this, and this. And the doctor just came in and he's asking us what we're going to do. Remember what mom said? Mom said that she wanted this and this, but not this, this, and this. And it helps everybody if mom was the one that said it, if dad was the one that said it. So say it, put it in writing, get a medical directive. You make it easier for everyone else. By all means, you should have a will. A will is simply a plan for distributing your things. And I think all married couples and older singles should have a will. Like, you have some things accumulated in life. Where are they supposed to go? That type of work is regulated on a state basis. The state of North Carolina, it will divide your things if you're too lazy or not competent to make a will. And they have certain rules they will follow to divide your things. But why wouldn't you take the responsibility of saying, this is what I want? This is where I want my things to go. If you're an older single person, for instance, and you have some things, you have a car and you have a little bit of money in the bank, if something happens to you, if North Carolina is like Virginia, it's all going to go to your parents. Maybe your parents don't need it. Maybe you have a best friend who has a hard life situation. Maybe you'd rather give it to a mission. Okay? If you have a will, you can make those types of choices and not just follow the default. I think it's vitally important for younger families to have a will, not because you want to decide where your things go, but because if you have a will, then you're able to name guardians for your children. The way it works in most states is if a man and a wife would die together, or one dies and then the other soon afterwards, and they did not have a will or name guardians, it goes to a judge to decide who gets those children. It doesn't go to the family. The church by no means is consulted. It goes to a judge, and a judge will decide where those children are going to live, who's going to take care of them. In the day and age in which we live, it's kind of profoundly unwise to leave that up to a judge, when you could go to the bother of writing a will, and you could decide who is taking care of those children. There's another tragedy to avoid. Not the first tragedy I just talked about is the tragedy that your children would go to a non-Christian or a harmful home. The other tragedy is strife in a family. I have been in committee situations where a husband and a wife passed away together. They had a row of children, and they didn't have a will, and they didn't name guardians. You might say it was a blessing. In both cases, all of their siblings on both sides, they had 5 siblings on one side, she had 5 siblings, he had 5 siblings. All of them were members in good standing in the church. We ought to be able to work this out. It has to go to a judge. The judge is going to decide who gets these children, but all the family can come in there together, her family, his family. We can all together petition the judge who we want these children to go to, and the judge will probably listen. And they went in voting 5-5. 5 on her side insisted the children had to go to her side of the family. The 5 on his side insisted the children had to go to their side of the family. What a testimony that was in a courtroom. Plain people, and they're fighting over children. Now that's strife born out of love. Both sides of the family loved those children. They both wanted those children to come to our side of the family. Mom and Dad should have made that decision themselves. They should have decided whether they go to Uncle Peter's or to Aunt Jane's. If you have a will, you can name guardians and you can decide, and you can avoid family strife. These types of things need to be clearly communicated. If you have minor children, children under the age of 18, you should have picked where they go. What you pick does not matter unless it's written in a will. So it's useless, like you wasted your time deciding. But you should pick, it should be in a written will, and it should be communicated. It would be something that I would say you consult with your parents. They do not have a vote. You're just telling your dad that, Dad, you kind of know how Dad is, Dad, if something happens to me and my wife, the children are going to Michael's. Well, no, I think they ought to go. Well, thank you for your opinion, Dad. The children are going to Michael's. And Dad, I want you to promise me you won't cause problems about this, because we decided the children are going to Michael's. And when this happens, if it ever happens, Dad, I expect you to be a man and to support us. The children go to Michael's. There shouldn't be surprises. I think children shouldn't be surprised. When we did this when our boys were young, they were going to go to Jay and Rachel's. My wife's brother and his wife lived in the same community, same church. We had all boys, they had all girls. The boys were like, yes, that will be great. They were thick as thieves with their cousins. And, do they worry about it? Does one of them end up in your bed that night, the night you told them? Are you going to die tomorrow, Mom? No, we're just making plans in case something happens. It'll be okay. 1 or 2 nights, they're over it. And the rest of their life, they kind of know, okay, if something happens to Mom and Dad, that's going to be sad, but we get to go to Jay and Rachel's and live with the cousins. It's like a peace of mind. They know that Mom and Dad made a plan. It also helps you on the back end, because children whose life situation is upset, their life basket is turned over, even when they end up in a good, loving, nurturing family, they do turn into teenagers. And they hit a time in their life where they're questioning and pushing boundaries. And that child, it's good for that child when they're 15 years old and they just had an argument with their adopted mom, adopted dad, who's actually their aunt or uncle or some relation, to be able to lay in bed that night and remember the reason I'm here is because mom and dad picked this for me. And although I don't like the argument I had today, and I don't agree with everything my new parents are telling me, this is where mom and dad picked for me. It wasn't just happenstance that I ended up here. This was intentional. Mom and dad chose this. Mom and dad told me about this, and they told me why I'm here. And it might help that child accept and get through those harder patches in life. I think you need to supply your heirs with general information about your situation if you're an older person. If you're my age or older, your children shouldn't wonder what you have. They should know what you have. In our family, I do a balance sheet every year. I do it in December, and we have our Christmas supper for the family. After supper, we have a little family thing we do, family business meeting. And they're like, oh, we got to go in the living room and have business meeting. They actually enjoy it, I think. But we're going to have business meeting at Christmas supper. And they each get a copy of the balance sheet. These are the accounts I have that have money in them. These are the properties that I own, and this is what the current value is on each one. And this one has some timber on it, and the timber was appraised at this, and this is the equipment that I own. They know what it is. And I'm free to do that because they're not blabbermouths. Now, maybe if you have a child that does not know how to control their mouth, you might not be able to do that. But if you've trained your children to hold information in confidence, let them know what there is because they're the ones that have to clean it up when you're gone. Give them fair notice. Another thing that we started doing, I got this idea from someone else, and I really like it. So we've got boys, and I sit the boys down in business meeting, and we have a little written plan for who's doing what to take care of mom if something happens to dad. And the responsibilities are divided out 3 ways. One of the boys is responsible for everything inside mom's house. Like, mom doesn't need to change a light bulb. If mom's got a drippy faucet, mom doesn't need to call a plumber because Hans is responsible. If it's anything in mom's house, he's to be on top of that. It doesn't mean he has to do everything himself, but who's responsible if mom's got a plumbing problem? Hans is responsible. And all 3 of the boys know that Hans is responsible. One of the boys is responsible for everything outside mom's house. It doesn't mean that he has to mow the grass and push the snow all by himself, but if the snow needed pushed and it didn't get pushed, that's on JoJo. Because JoJo should have said, I can't get it today, Rich, you got to get over there and plow snow for mom. You got to get somebody to get mom's snow plowed. He's responsible for everything outside of the house. And then a 3rd boy is responsible to make sure mom has a good, dependable vehicle, and mom never needs to wonder if she needs tires or the oil changed. Because Rich takes care of that. And the oil will be changed whenever it needs changed. All mom needs to do is turn the key. And if it doesn't go brum when she turns the key, all she needs to do is call Rich. And Rich solves the problem. Okay? That's something that you can help your children grow in. Okay? So if you're the man in the family, talk to the children, who's going to do what for mom. And then mom probably needs to come alongside and you say, Dad needs a lot taken care of. And y'all kind of know how he is. You got to help Dad with this, and you got to help Dad with this. And you've always been able to talk to Dad and get him to do what he needs to do. When he needs to go to the doctor, you're the one. Little Sophie here is the one that has to go tell Dad he's got to go to the doctor because he'll listen to Sophie and he won't listen to Richie. Divide out responsibilities in a way that they can work forward. I think you need to have funeral plans written. How many of you older people have your funeral plans written out? You know, as a minister, several times, I'm not an old minister, but I've had to sit with a family to make funeral plans. You know, that's a real lousy time to make funeral plans when somebody died. They're all upset. They're grieving. Often it's a shock. And we're trying to figure out who's leading singing. No, 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 no. That should have already been taken care of. If you've got a sound mind, you know which songs you like. You maybe even know which preacher you would like to have preach. Put that on paper now. Tell somebody where it is. It's in the front cover of my Bible, or it's taped inside the kitchen cupboard door. And there's my funeral plans. Who I want to preach, who I want the pallbearers to be, the songs that I want to have sung. You can go ahead and do that. And you make it so much easier for the ones left behind. They don't have to. Mom already had it all worked out. Right there it is. We just need to get the list down and notify the people. The last thing I would encourage you to do to organize your affairs is to organize your affairs. How many of you can afford to buy a 3-ring binder? You older people? Like you think you could afford the $1.27? Okay. You go to the dollar store and you get you a 3-ring binder. You want a good one, you go to Staples, okay? Get you a 3-ring binder and you get some dividers made in that binder. And then you have little sections in the binder. The one we have at home, the boys know where this binder is because they see it every year at the family business meeting. We go to the safe and we get it out of the gun safe. And all the boys know the combination to the gun safe. So when Dad isn't here, they can open the gun safe and get the binder out. They flip open the binder and there is 2 sheets of paper in the front cover of the binder. One is every password that I have, so they can close down every account that I have. All the passwords are right there in the binder, locked in the gun safe. The second piece of paper is where all my money is. This checking account, and it has this much in it. This checking account, it has this much. This savings account, this IRA, and I update it about every 2 weeks. It should never be more than 2 weeks old. Where's the money at? Because we need to pay the funeral home. Well, it's in the front of the binder, and pull that little sheet out and you'll know how much money Dad has where, how much is, in the cookie jar, give or take. It gives them an idea what they're operating in. The next section in the binder is your will. Where is Mom and Dad's will? It's in the binder in the gun safe. Where's the medical directive where Mom said that she didn't want such and such? Maybe the hospital is asking to see it, or the doctor. It's in the gun safe. It's in the second section in the binder. We can just go clip it open, and we have it to read. Bank statements. The most current bank statement goes in the binder. And then they don't have to dig through the desk. The deeds for all the real estate, I actually ended up putting them in a second separate binder, but we own 3 pieces of property, nothing great and glamorous, but there's 3 of them. The deeds are all in the binder because they're going to have that information and when they need it. In that same binder are the title for every vehicle that I own. Okay? The person who gave me this idea, bless them. They probably had to, they came up with this idea because they had to search on backs of envelopes to find information about their parents. And you can put it all in a binder. And it actually helps me because where is the title for the Honda 4-wheeler? Well, of course, it's in the binder where the titles are. And they are all there. And I also include a section, just helpful information. Who knows where the clean out is for the septic system? Well, it's 40 feet off the northwest corner of the house under the flat stone by it shouldn't be by a big tree if it's a septic clean out, but you get the picture. Well, who knows that? Dad knows that, and Dad's dead. And somebody's going to need to know where the septic clean out is. That's the type of things that you put in that section there. And you know what? You can actually do this. This isn't hard. It's going to cost you like $10 to buy the binder and the dividers and some copy paper. It's going to take you a little bit of time because you do have to put everything in the binder. And then you need to update it when something changes. If you sell a vehicle, you have to take the title out and put the new title in. You need to update your financial information. And we're going to stop right there. You can't do all of that at one time, but you can start doing something. If you're an older person, you can start cleaning up after yourself.